All right. So now we reach to the point where the Management Studio and Azure Data Studio has been installed, and it is asking for me to restart my machine to complete the installation process. But before I reboot the virtual machine, let me just close the installer. And let me go back. I don't need this at this stage. Yeah, I don't need this at this stage. So let me minimize it. I'm all good. So now we can see we have the client tool, SQL Server Management tool installed on my machine. And normally I run it as an admin just to make sure we are not conflicting with any DLL during the load, but you can run it as normal. There's no issue with that. So let me just spin up the Management Studio. So now we are going to connect to our database engine, which has been installed on our machine. So you're gonna see initially automatically pick the server name, and that's why I ask you not to change the server name because server name is something that has been configured within the SQL Server installation. So if you change it, you can still manage the server machine on in the production environment, but obviously there are a lot of changes required to make sure the changes are stable and the operations are running smoothly. So while you're doing the planning, be very careful with the initial configuration, especially the disk structure, server, number of services that you require on your production box, which will definitely give you a lot of benefit on the long term. By saying it, if you are using Azure, which is obviously Microsoft-based cloud environment, all these things Microsoft is managing on your behalf, and you literally, you just need to spin up the database and start using your database. There are many scenarios where where one database is not enough, so that's why Microsoft has provided multiple flavor. That's something which we will, once we start the cloud, we will see over there. At this stage, let me click on connect. An update is available. I'm not going to install it at this stage. You're going to see this notification is coming, and normally the ideal structure is, let me, you know what I'm going to do? Let me put an other diagram here. Let me save it up, and I'm going to attach it with the video through the link. Like I'm going to upload it on maybe on Git, and then I'll provide you the link, or maybe on this some shared folder. So let me go in work configuration. Yep. Let me see. Server. I normally keep the documents or images into a respective folder. It will just help me finding them quickly once I need them. And I think I'm all good at it. A new folder in here. All right. So what I'm going to do to actually show you how the SQL servers are available to you in the real environment, because this course is not like, you are not listening to someone who hasn't actually looked at the SQL server in the industry. So there are two categories: people who didn't work in the industry, they learn from uni, and then they come up with all these online video tutorial, and then they start educating, and I have full respect for them. But there are a lot of things that you will learn by your experience. And obviously once you spend more than 10 to 11 years in one field, lots and lots of things that experience will teach you. So in this series, I'm going to actually share all that knowledge, or as much as I can, with you guys. So once you guys enter into the industry, you will understand if things are happening in front of you, why they are happening, and at least you have the idea, you have the base that how things work in the industry. And sometimes these facts or these points will really help you a lot during your job interviews. So normally we have the environment where we have our servers who are sitting. This, yeah, there's our server, and then we have, obviously we have our clients. Let me see. And then in the same box, if I literally put, we have multiple servers sitting in the platform, and we are connecting to the server, to the client application. So let me, just put. So if I just put the production environment, so what normally happen. So let's say that's our SID PRD SQL 01, because it's very rare that in organization we only have one SQL server. We used to have multiple SQL servers which are addressing different requirements or part of the different applications or part of the different project. It really depends upon the enterprise landscape. And once we are working, we'll see which server we need to connect. And then obviously our laptop has the client application, like in here, I have my SQL Server Management Studio, which I'm going to use to connect the SQL server, right? But that's normally the production architecture. In dev architecture, these two things, let me put, so in dev architecture, these two things remain on the same server most of the time, because that will help us to to run and execute our scenarios quickly. You don't need to depend upon the network connectivity, and there are a lot of benefits. But obviously once we finish anything, we will move it to the proper testing environment, where we test our artifacts, and then we move it into the production through a proper change management processes, which is again a topic for a separate video. Now, so that's a quick discussion. And now if I go and replicate practically, so you can see now my client is application is there, which is SQL Server Management Studio. Right now, I don't have any database. Let me open the detailed panes, because I normally use that to interact with the client. However, what I have, if I actually expand it, we have the system databases, and now you can see we have master, model, MSDB, and TempDB. Out of those four, you are now aware of the TempDB, that whatever we're going to actually use temporarily, those objects, temporary objects, are going to be created into this database. Master model MSDB, we're going to discuss in the future one. But one thing, you don't need to do anything with these system databases, especially in the production, because these databases are more like no-go area, because SQL Server uses these databases to perform its operation. Just as a start of this journey, I'm just going to now spin up a new database that will actually help us to test our SQL Server installation. And let me call it honor is default. I didn't come towards this security, which I'm going to come later. And now that's the important part. You can see we have the logical name, which is exactly the replication of our name, which we are giving to our database. And then in this database file section, we have two main types. One is obviously the data files, and the other ones are the log files. So now you have already seen the temp database, which obviously retain the temp files. But in this section, you are seeing now two major files. One is the data file, which is going to contain our data and has the .mdf extension by default. The second one is the log entry, which is going to contain all the log which is going to be generated as part of the database operation while we are doing the insertion and deletion and update operation. So that's where the log has been generated and saved into the file. You can see we have multiple file group that we can create. Initially, by default, SQL Server provide the primary file group, and then we can create even more file groups, right? And file type is raw data. Initial size, normally it remains to MB. Now that's very important, because if you want allocate a right side on the in the start, what SQL will do, as soon as it consumes the full size, it's going to allocate the chunk. So you can see it might impact on the performance once the server is really stressed out by multiple operation running on it, right? So just do an estimation and allocate a reasonable size that you can think of that the database is gonna grow up to. So for me, for example, if I actually start with 1024, so that means up to 1 gig, nothing is going to be increased on the database file level, because we have already allocated 1 gig to our MDF file, right? And afterward, it's going to actually allocate 64 MB as a next chunk. So once it consumes the next 64 MB, it will increase another one. I would prefer to allocate in percent, because that will be a better approach, especially once we allocate bigger size. Obviously, that's not the production size. Our production database is way bigger than 1 gig in these days. So you can see that's why I prefer to use the percentage, because whatever the size of the database, it will calculate the percentage of whatever we have actually put in here, and then it allocate the chunk once the size has been consumed. Now, that's a quite dangerous approach. If you leave it to unlimited, then we might be in a trouble. And the reason is obviously, if the databases keep growing, it might consume the full disk if you don't have a proper monitoring system. And trust me, I've seen it a lot where the disk file is almost full, and we haven't got the notification, and the next day the whole production system got stopped because there was no space on the data disk, which happened a lot in the industry due to many reasons that you will find out once you start working in the modern enterprises. The second option is limited, where we can limit the size. Obviously, if we have a limited size on our disk, so in our case, because it's a dev virtual machine, so let me quickly go and show it to you. So you can see I have put all my files on the C drive. I mean, it's already showing me where it's gonna put all these files. I actually show you that path later. So it only has 75 gig available. So now if I leave it unlimited, I might consume all the space on my drive, which impact on the server, the whole server itself. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to limit it. So for example, maybe up to 10 MB, sorry, up to 10 gig. So that's the calculation. Again, I mentioned that we can do a very quick calculation, converting the MBs into GBs or terabytes or petabytes. And if you are not familiar on all these units, you can go to any website and you can do that calculation. As part of what I was thinking, once we start the development, we're going to build that module where we provide the KBs and it will return the MBs or GBs. So a quick conversion on the SQL level could be a good example. Anyway, coming back to the point, so we'll limit it to 10 gig. Click OK. So we are good. So you can see now every time it's going to actually allocate 10% of whatever the size is going to be. And then once that has been consumed, it will allocate another chunk. Now, there was the folder that we have selected during the installation. So you're going to see it has all the data file. So right now you can see it has master log, model, everything is sitting in here. Right now you can see log and master, the MDF files, they are all sitting on the same drive, even the same folder. And there is a reason, like I mentioned, it's a dev environment, so we are not following the industry practices. But once we move into the production, we will carefully move the file on their respective drive. And trust me, the same thing is applicable on the Azure or cloud environment. We will gonna see that thing, and I'll show reiterate it again once we do the same thing within the cloud environment. Coming back to finalize the file area. So I think we are good at this stage. We'll keep the thing simple. Option, obviously there are plenty of option. I'm not going to talk to collation at this stage, but that's something which is more like a kind of worm for us. Lots and lots of debates are going where how we're going to manage if the databases have different collation, how we will manage them, because especially once you start querying cross databases, like one table is sitting in one database and the other one is sitting in the other database, which is very normal. Keep in mind that is a very normal thing you're going to identify in the industry, right? So how you can deal with it, because that will create a lot of ugliness in your queries. Your scripts are not clean. You are putting collate against the column, against the join condition, which is obviously not putting a very clean and fancy query while you are writing them. How we can deal it, make sure you stick to one collation against all your database. It should be one of the standard that you adopt, and then stick to it, right? And if we have the external system that is providing the data, then we need to load it into the similar database as a temporary container with the collision, which is compatible with the external system. But then we need to load it back into our system with a similar collation, which is agreed upon within our enterprise. So there are many workaround how we can control it. Recovery model, full, simple, workload. That's another topic. At this stage, I'm just going to retain simple. The only difference, once you keep simple, it won't retain the log backups, which is obviously required if you want to create the differential backup, or if you want to create the transaction log backup, because every time within the simple, if the log file is full, it's going to override and start again. Compatibility level, we can see all the way up to 2008. I'm not going to change the compatibility level because the new database, so we can stick with 2019. At this stage, there are different settings. We are not going to into those at this stage. It's a completely separate topic, I think. And file groups, again, I'm gonna keep it default just to make things simple, because we're gonna take step by step so you can digest the SQL Server. I believe we are good. There are two things. You can click OK and it will create the database. Here's the point. You can click script and it will generate the script, that will help you to familiarize with the scripting language. Because scripting, we are not only doing it for development. There is a language that we use to manage the database. There is a language that we use to manage even the server hardware and even the whole cloud environment, right? So if you start using the scripting language instead of the user interface, obviously initially to start the journey we use interface to start understanding or building the script. But once we are familiar with the commands like, okay, create database, create the database within the SQL environment, what is primary, what is log, and then what is the compatibility level. So all these options, once we are familiarized with them, will obviously stick to the script instead of UI. So if you want to execute, there's a button in here. You can click on it, and then, or you can press F5 your keyboard. And wait, lo and behold, you have a new user database in your system. And that database is a user-defined database. You can see it has all the objects and capabilities that we can use to build any sort of, operational or analytical database. By the way, operational and analytical database follow the same process. The only thing, the concept, the pattern is different between these two worlds. And I think at some stage during this series, once we are comfortable in the operational side, and we start entering into the OLAP side or analytical side, I'll show you that how funny it is that even the two database, they're looking same, like both have the table, but they are completely different world. So I think we are good, like our database has been created without any error, and we can see different objects, we can see different tables. And by the way, let me quickly run our first query, which is more like just checking some information, and you can see, yeah, everything is good. Although we don't have any table, that's why it's not actually showing me any table in this entry. What is information schema, what is table, we'll discuss it in the future video. I think that's enough for this video. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna actually close the management studio. I'm gonna reboot my system to finish any task which is pending. And in the next video, we're gonna see similar thing within the Azure Studio that has been installed beside Management Studio. So thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next step in learning the data and analytics.